Welcome to the Redhead Reveal podcast. I am Jen Pinkerton, your Redhead host, a psychotherapist, high-performance coach, writer, and speaker. As a connection expert, I help people reveal their connectedness within relationships, transforming from the root causes of beliefs and behaviors that hold them back from thriving in life. Let's talk about how you're thriving. Today, we're going to talk to Jenny Salerno and about her trauma and her brain injury and how neuroscience and integrating with the true self helped her heal and how she helps others. All right. Today, we're going to dive in with Jenny Salerno. Jenny is the founder of the Quantum Mindset Academy, and she also has Mindshift Elixirs and Reset and Renew Yoga. And I just love so much of your approach and your philosophy that I was able to learn about you. And I can't wait for you to fill everybody in about you and what you do. Jenny, welcome.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be on here. Thanks for having me.
So I understand you've had like a journey that was really impactful for you. Some things that you went through that brought you where you are. Can you enlighten us a little bit about, educate us about that path for you?
Yeah, and I'll keep it kind of brief and do like a bullet point overview. It started, I was very young, 14, and this is probably where you give that PSA warning, right? So at 14, yeah, I was raped, and then from there, my whole life shifted, right? So you go completely silent, I stayed inward, and from that, I realized later on in life that my whole identity was lost, right? I didn't know who I was and all of that. So from there, I just kept kind of falling into this pattern with men that I would date that were kind of in the same scenario of like abusive and, considering where I was emotionally and how I felt about myself. And that path just kept continuing on through who I dated to ended up who I married. That also was not a good experience. Then I got divorced, then dated someone else that again, I still was in that same headspace, and dated someone else. However, right before I got divorced, I had a horrendous injury. I did the silks where you kind of fly in the air, and I ended up falling on the crown of my head and fractured my skull, had internal bleeding in my brain. And that left me to go into a nice deep slumber, literally coma for 3 days, woke up with intermittent paralyzation, wasn't able to move, and had periodic spouts of that. Speech was gone, movement gone. Then again, I come out of that, which is a journey in itself. End up dating someone else, get sexually assaulted with that guy, finally come out of all of this in a whole different perspective. And it kind of led me down this really beautiful journey, which what happened at 14 in that long line led me into a space of yoga. Mm-hmm. Then the accident happens and I dive down into this pathway of understanding and studying the brain and what happens inside the brain. And thankfully, before my accident, I had done this yoga therapy training and studying on that realm of that side. So I intertwined that and I was like determined to help myself heal. And then that led me into diving down the rabbit hole of understanding quantum physics and quantum mechanics. And so bleeding all that together. So as quickly as you can go over from 14 to where I am now, there's a little overview effect of what led me down this beautiful journey.
And what I hear you saying is, these really big events in your life were impactful for you to kind of search for something different. And I think that resonates so much with the viewers and listeners we have on this podcast, because that growth is what everybody's looking for. That way that we can turn our mess into a message for us, for what we're going to do with our life and how it's going to bring us to something so much bigger. And you had a quest for something bigger from that.
Yeah. There's something, I have a daughter who's almost 20. And one thing I always tell her is I would never change anything that's happened in my life for the fact that it's literally led me down this beautiful course of study, of realization, of self-awareness, of inner knowing. So nothing I would actually change. So whatever any of your viewers are going through, even in the midst of those like darkest moments, there's something so profound within that, right? It's this beautiful message of awakening, right? These little breadcrumbs of leading you to an amazing space.
Mm-hmm. So the quantum mindset, which I think I've heard you talk about how impactful it is to you and what it really means to you and how you've shaped your life. For those of us that aren't familiar with it, can you tell us about it and how it helps healing these emotional wounds and what you've gone through?
Yeah, it's a hybrid of a lot of things. So in that journey, I went through a lot of pathways, and from that, I developed this simplified message that helps people understand how to regulate their nervous system, understanding observer effect, mindfulness practices, meditation, and repetition, and how repetition is key into creating change. So this whole course that I developed is a simplified way. It's like this really cool GPS system that gets you from one point to another, and it just guides you turn by turn to get to the destination of of the self, right? So that's it's it's actually really incredible the amount of people that have taken the course, the success that they've had, and their whole life trajectory just completely changing. You know, that 1 degree shift changes everything.
Absolutely. We're always just one step away, one decision away from having our life look and feel very different.
Yeah. Just that one little pivot.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I know that neuroscience is a big part of this for you. What was your deep dive into that and what did that look like?
So it was when I was literally laid out, not able to move, and I wanted to understand how our whole nervous system works, how our brain works, and how much we can actually mold and change and heal from that perspective. And those are literally like rabbit holes that you can, once you start going down them, they're like this endless thing of amazing information. And then this beautiful realization of that we have the capacity to change every small, minute amount down to a molecular level.
And I'm with you with that because I can geek out on neuroscience all day long. It is just something that I love. And I talk often about neural pathways, and we have that ability to form a new neural pathway every day, all day long. We never have to stay stuck.
Yeah.
Our body knows what we tell it. It knows what we experience, and we can choose to experience something different. We can choose to tell it something different. We can choose to really create a totally different mindset and approach. And that's one of the things that I loved when I was hearing you talk. I want to quote something back to you that you had said that was really along with this. When you're talking about, you said one of the most fundamental relationships is with ourself, and that everything extends from us. And when it's not, we're outsourcing basically ourselves. We're not knowing who we are. And that resonates with me because I talk about lived truth a lot, our lived truth. So I want you to kind of go into that and what you were talking about outsourcing our own self-trust.
Essentially, like my whole path is I was outsourcing everything, right? I believe fundamentally that every single thing that we do in life is a relationship, how we feel, how we interact, who we talk to, right? What we eat, like down to everything. Like people forget, like even the simplest thing is, and we end up outsourcing our energy to all these people and handing it away without even realizing it. We just kind of like mindlessly maneuver through life, not even being fully aware of what we are doing. And in return, we've handed away every single thing, and our relationships are dissipated. And then we kind of robotically function. And what I believe wholeheartedly is once we understand that every single thing that we do is a relationship, we then have everything vested within the self to, just like you were saying, right? We get to create exactly what we want it to be, how we see it, how we experience it, how we feel it, and we can create exactly what we want from that space. And, I know in business they say outsource is good. However, when it comes to the self, everything needs to stem from the self.
And I mean, that goes along with and aligns just the fact that we know now that the more authentic we are to who we are, and we're stepping in a place of authenticity, that's when our life is going to prosper in so many different ways from a connection standpoint. Well, it's impossible to connect with other people if we're not being authentic.
Right. And I mean, for everyone that's listening, just so you're aware, not everyone's going to like you. And in all honesty, that's okay. Like that is okay. It's okay to not be liked. And it's only since maybe you're showing something in them that they need to like pay more attention to. I've learned that. I mean, I'm very known for what I do in the state that I'm in, and it has been a love-hate relationship with people since you just shine the light a little bit brighter in areas that they just really haven't paid attention to. So, like, and I feel that that's important for people to understand that when you show up as your true self,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay that not everyone's going to love that.
Mm-hmm.
And as so long as your relationship with yourself is good, then it doesn't even affect you in return.
Well, and that's part of that energy aspect too. When you recognize, I don't like the energy of these people I'm with. I don't like how I feel when I'm with these people. And when we start taking an inventory of our bodies, back to that nervous system you're talking about, and we recognize I don't feel aligned when I'm around these people. These people are not my people. It's a light bulb moment. And I think until you go through some sort of quest or searching or path to figuring out who you are and what you are, you might not see that before. And so it's exactly what you're talking about. That when you start to see it, you can't unsee it. We can't know what we know once we start learning that. And we're no longer attracted to some of the same energy and people. You may not want to be friends with the same people you were friends with. You may not want to definitely don't want to date the same people you might have wanted to date before. The whole energy changes and the way we connect with other people changes.
Exactly. Yeah. And which I kind of, when you're evolving in that capacity and when people dissipate, come in and they get on the train, they get off the train, that's actually a really cool thing. Like that's a signal to you that you're on this really amazing path of coming into the self. I always tell people the minute you see people entering and exiting, that just means you're just on this great path right now where you're coming into your own, and all those people that need to exit and get off at that stop, it's their time and they'll come back on
Right.
later. And you too.
And if they don't, that's okay too. It's a different way to look at everything from breakups relationally, breakups to friendships. A breakup with somebody, friendship, professional, personal, romantic, doesn't have to be anything other than I just didn't feel like this is right anymore for me. And that's enough. And I think oftentimes we don't tell ourselves that that's enough. We have to look for the answer. We have to search for the reason. We've got to give all this explanation. But if we're so connected with our bodies and so connected with our true authentic self, that's enough to know this is not where I belong. This is not what I need to be doing. And you're staying with that forward movement and not getting stuck somewhere that holds you back.
Yeah, stop analyzing, right? Drop into the heart. Like we were blessed with this strong sphere to function from that space. And so often we overanalyze everything and we justify too, which is the other caveat of that, right? So when we stop overthinking and we feel and we allow, then trusting that path will never lead you astray.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think when people come to you to work with you? What do you think is the biggest, problem that you see, the biggest issue that resonates with so many of your clients? What do you think that is?
Not trusting themselves,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing who they are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how does that manifest? In what ways do they show you that presenting concern?
They stay in these habitual patterns, right? And I'll use myself as a prime example where you just keep dating. We'll use it in a dating scenario. You keep dating the same guy, it might be slightly different, right? You're stuck in this pattern behavior since you don't really trust the self, right? I never trusted to trust my intuition. I didn't trust what I felt was accurate. And so most people that come are usually in a state of distrust. They don't know who they are, so they don't trust what they think. They don't trust what they feel. And we seek the answers, right? We're outsourcing this. We seek someone else to tell us what the answer is. And we'll use it in a relationship. For me, it was I was seeking the male on the other side to tell me what I needed to hear, to fill up a hole, right? I didn't trust that I had the capacity to do it.
Right. That was your own pain that you hadn't addressed that in a way that you were looking for someone to fulfill you. And no one fulfills us, right? We have all that innate power within us.
Yeah. It really is an interesting thing. Like, I don't believe in reliving the past over and over again. And I don't think it's necessary to. I do believe, though, it's good to understand where we've been and what creates the patterns and the why we move in that direction. And once we really peel it down to the simplest form, it literally comes down to how we have a relationship with ourselves, how we have a relationship with our thoughts, and how we have a relationship with how we feel.
Right.
Thoughts, feelings, and emotions, they create matter. So it's like what we do with all of that is what creates the next thing that's in front of us.
So what do you think were the stages you went through on this journey? You know, you had this injury, you had this trauma, and these life experiences that obviously shaped you as they shape all of us. What do you think those pivotal moments were? You know, the stages that you went through? Because I like to give people a kind of landscape or an overview of this is maybe what somebody had to go through to get to where they are.
Yeah, you got to go through some dark stuff. Whoever's out there, like sometimes you do. I mean, not everyone needs to. Let's like preface that. Not everybody does need to. Apparently, I'm one of those that did. And you go through these really dark moments. For me, my stages were 14 that occurred. And then I started doing drugs and going down that rabbit hole, right? I was
numbing, you were numbing the pain, basically.
I was actually, yeah, I was this amazing athlete that had a path that could have, I was on this pathway of junior Olympics and destroyed all of that, right? Through partying, since I didn't want to face what was going on. My next pivotal moment was falling into a relationship with another guy that was clearly not, I was in the same capacity of where I was, let's put it that way, to where there was a gun held to my head. So that was my next like
okay, moment. Wait, stop. Gun held to your head? That's
why I'm like, I do this brief overview.
Breathe by that, Jenny. That's big. That's really big. I do want to minimize that. I want to be able to have people hear that here's somebody, I can see you and you're so self-assured and I can see that you're so sure about who you are and where you are. But obviously there was a time you were not. You're telling me, you were raped. You're telling me you had drug use. You're telling me you had a gun held to your head in a relationship. What is that?
Yeah, that was, I stabbed my finger, since for me, it still is, it's like when you watch one of those movies, like that whole event to me was like when you're watching this movie play out, it was the most wildest thing. And I had a date rape drug in my drink at a bar that I went to with a girlfriend, and my boyfriend had showed up and he found me and he was not happy. And all I remember are snippets of like, he had this Mustang that he was remodeling or fixing up. And I just remember like banging around in the Mustang while he was like taking the turns really sharp. And then I don't remember anything. And then I remember coming to again in the bathroom and he was yelling at me. And I kind of remember going out. And then I remember coming back to a 9mm cocked back held to my head and him yelling at me and screaming at me and telling me that the gun was loaded. And I was just like, please don't die right now. Please don't die. Like those.
And this was someone you were in a relationship with that claims to love you, that you claim to love at the moment. That's where you were.
Yes. Isn't that? And then I just like, so I think back and it's like, that just shows the relationship I had with myself, right? It manifests and expresses in every relationship we have outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that just showed where I was. Did it mean that his actions are right? No. However, I was with a person that was basically a demonstration of what I was, right? Mm-hmm. Like yeah, so I've had drug use. I had that. I was suicidal. I was hospitalized. Like there's whoever is watching this, like sometimes you go through some of the gnarliest stuff that I don't wish upon anyone. However, I would never take any of it away. So it was rape, suicide, gun to the head, accident. So then that, and then divorce. And then the next phase would have been then the guy I dated after that and the sexual assault. So those are like, which is kind of a lot, let's be real. Like that's a lot to keep.
It's a lot to have to endure and go through. We only get one life to live, and yours was wrought by a lot of pain and trauma.
Yeah, which then on the flip side, right? To know that I get to experience this side, which is so incredible. So I really know the other side, and I can really appreciate this side. Like I wake up every morning in a state of gratitude. The first thing I do when my eyes open is I say 3 things that I'm grateful for, from the gross to the subtle. So that's like, the polar opposite of where I was even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Yeah, would it be about 5, 6 years ago? That like to where I am now is completely different.
Mm-hmm. And now your mindset is so different and your approach to life is so different.
Yeah, which is what encompassed all of this in quantum mindset. It's like, what practices did I do that worked the absolute best for me? And how do I simplify it for people, especially when your nervous system's dysregulated? You can only do so much when you're in that space. So how can I simplify something that can create a pathway for people to have success within the journey that they're on.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't need to go on their journey as long as I did, right? That's kind of basically what it is. Like, look, I did it for a super long time. Let's see how I can simplify it so that others don't need to.
Mm-hmm. For
Here's a really
sure.
cool way to do it.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love seeing your energy and your light now of where you are. And I mean, it radiates as we're sitting here and I'm looking at you. And I love knowing that people can make it to that other place. And I think it's you're a beacon of hope in that way for people. And I want people to see someone and really know, wow, look at these things that this person encountered and endured and how they're on the other side of that.
Yeah, and it's great, like for people like you that bring this to everyone's attention. Like that's like such a gift in itself, like bringing a collection of people so that everyone that listens to this can see that they're not alone, which I think is a key piece, right? That so people understand, oh, I'm not alone. This
Mhm.
isn't something that no one's ever gone through. Okay, there's hope.
Right. And I like to normalize the concept that you can endure a lot of things and your life can be not where, how you want it to be, but that's not a sentence. You know, we can actually choose to shift and pivot. We're only one step away, one decision away, one moment away from things feeling very different and then our life looking and being very different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that classic saying, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change.
That's
And that
right.
is literally truth. Like,
Mhm.
and it sounds so simple. However, I understand when you're in such a dark space, that is such a hard thing to actually do.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears and talk about, let's see, you had this product line of Mindshift Elixirs. So tell us kind of all about that and what that is.
Amazing. I'm really super excited about it. This was birthed from a space of reconnecting with the self. So the product that we're actually launching is an intimacy oil,
Mhm.
and it's all natural. So it's really good for the pH of women. It's really good. There's benefits for men. And from obviously my sexual trauma, this whole healing process, creating a completely different relationship with the self. Anyone that's been through any type of assault sexually and physically, you kind of lose this relationship with yourself
Mhm. With your body. Hmm.
completely, right? And that intimate experience, that relationship is completely different. And so from a lot of my healing process came changing my relationship with how I experience myself, my sexuality, my sensuality, right? Being able to be comfortable in my body and in my skin. And so this whole line is created in a way to shift the mind and shift the experience with the self. And so we wanted to start with one that's called For Pleasure. That's FORE in little parentheses.
Mhm.
So that people, it's can be used anywhere on the face and the body. However, it's also used for like the intimacy of the touch and the sensory basis of that. Very excited about it. It's all natural. Since I live in Costa Rica, that's kind of what sparked this. So the main product is from Costa Rica. So that's also really
Well, congratulations about that. We'll have be sure we link it in our show notes so that people can follow up and buy some.
I'll need to send you some too, especially with
Absolutely. For
you. Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Do you want to give any sort of code or anything to our viewers today if they want to get some? So maybe we can do that at the end in our show notes and add something in that for them.
Oh, for sure. And maybe we'll put a code under you.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I love to be able to give my viewers and listeners a little something from listening and being able to follow through with that.
Oh,
Um, I want to go to daily practices because for you to maintain this balance in your life that you have now and this mental and this physical and integration with self, what is your daily practice? You mentioned this gratitude that you wake up to, but what else do you feel like is something that resonates with you that you think makes a fundamental difference in how you're showing up because you're doing this consistently? Back to the repetition concept that
yep,
you mentioned, which I'm really
exactly.
big on too, because we have to form that new neural pathway in our brain to be able to form this new habit, this new behavior system. So tell me about, what are your practices?
Yeah, so we have the gratitude and then I have my affirmations that I will write down and that I say. So I have a journal. We actually created a journal as well in Quantum Mindset. So in the journal, you write down your affirmations, and then I do a practice of looking in the mirror and verbally saying them to myself. So we've
Mhm.
got gratitude, we've got our affirmations, and then I go into meditation. And I know for a lot of people, that's kind of like this. People are like, well, I don't know how to meditate.
Mhm.
It's kind of like this scary thing that people are like,
Yes.
I don't know, do I really need to sit there and not think about anything? So meditation is key. However, just for anyone that's watching, when you can just sit and breathe, let the thoughts come in and out, and then go ahead and think of your laundry list if you need to, like start there first. Those are my main non-negotiables that I do every single day. And then I go right outside and I spend 10 minutes outside. So usually for me, I walk my dogs in the morning. So that way I can get the sun and the crisp air or warmer, whatever time of year it might be. And those things are the foundations of what I do. Journaling comes into play in the evening for me. So I start my day in that capacity. I end my day with journaling and reflecting on my day so that I can prepare for how I want to enter into my next day. And I'm going to give those as like a simple thing for anyone that's listening, that start with small steps like that. Start
Well,
with.
and I think the way, if you look at that on a bigger picture, the message I'm hearing is that number one, you're being grateful. Number two, you're giving yourself the privilege and the self-care of saying, I'm going to take this time for myself in the morning, and I'm going to decide and set the tone for my day. And then the next thing I'm hearing is that you're showing and illustrating the active presence and stillness. And for us to be able to do that, and the reason a lot of people have so much trouble with that is because if your nervous system's not aligned, sitting still is a threat. We don't feel emotionally safe to sit still. That's scary for a lot of people because that means we have to face how we're feeling. And if people have trouble sitting still, if you can't sit quietly under the act of the concept of meditating, where you're literally just sitting and thinking, if that is really hard, I always urge people that means something. That is a big flashing, neon light. If you can't sit still with your thoughts and feelings, you've got some work to do, and that's one of the fundamental passages of growth, in my opinion, is to be able to be present, to be able to be still, and to be able to understand what your thoughts are and have them flow freely without these protective parts and all these feelings of coming up where you want to run because this does not feel safe, to get to that place. And then next, when you're going outside, it's that concept of earthing. It's being one with nature. It's being able to have the charge from our own environment and where we live. And those are all key components that I feel like I talk about in that bigger picture. And so to hear you pull it down to this way, I think it resonates with the message that we try to really talk about often here, because I think those things in itself, even if someone isn't saying, I'm ready to change my relationship, I'm not ready to look at my friendships yet, I'm not ready to make a life change, but I can start thinking about this. I can start being more present. I can start doing different things in my habits daily that are going to make me feel better. They're going to make me feel more integrated with myself and not basically living for other people, not basically looking for other people to fill me.
Yeah. And you don't need, like, nothing needs to change drastically. And, actually that isn't sustainable, right? So when we are, and most of society, let's be real, is, dysregulate, their nervous system is all out of whack.
Right.
You, like, just for everyone that's listening, just know, gauge 1 to 4% change. That's it. So yeah, don't change the relationship. Don't do anything. Don't say you're going to go work out like really hard for, whatever length of time, like 1 to 4%, which in all reality is such a small amount. And it might be the beginning process of waking up and opening your eyes and being like, I am grateful that my eyes open today. I'm grateful for the sun, like start with something that's that 1% change. And then I agree, like, going outside is huge. That is one thing, right? When you wake up within that first hour, like going outside is such a game changer for your whole system.
Because I work with clients who will come and they'll say, I've blown up my life. I am stuck. I'm not happy. I have quit my job. I'm not talking to any of my friends. I've broken up with my boyfriend, or I filed for divorce, or my girlfriend and I are talking, whatever the situation is. And they're like, now what? And I think that's such the reverse way. I like to suggest people to start doing things in a small way, in a consistent way, that you feel safe and you start to trust yourself. And that aligns so much with your talking about outsourcing that self-trust, because I don't think we have the ability or the wherewithal to make these big life changes until you feel as though you know who you are. And if you're too lost, with everything else, then you're going to be looking, now what? Now I'm in a worse situation. Or I feel like I'm in a worse situation than I was before I did all that. Instead, if we go the other way with your talking, with these kind of shifts that you can make and start thinking differently and looking at things differently, I think that the outcome feels a lot safer. When our nervous system feels safe, it's working with us.
Yeah, exactly. And then everything responds so much better from that. And it's, this whole thing with starting small. right? We've become the society of like quick change and everything's got to be overnight. And,
Right.
I want my Amazon to show up today. Why do I need to wait till tomorrow? Right. I want everything to be instant. And
True.
like, it's like, it's gotten really bad.
It
So
is true.
it's just allowing that small little,
Instant gratification in life.
I want it all now. Why don't I just wake up and
Right.
my life is perfect?
Right.
However, the sustainability comes from like what you teach and what you talk about consistently, and what I believe in wholeheartedly is those small steps of repetition is the key to everything.
Mhm.
That's what will create the largest change in your life.
Yes, I agree with that completely. I think I also read that you have shamanic training, that you have Reiki Mastery, and I want to talk about that a little bit. I don't want to not pay heed to that because those are interesting things that I think sometimes people have a sort of, I call it woo-woo mentality, that it feels too,
That's what I call it. Yeah.
it feels too out there. It feels like something that is so foreign. And I like to be able to bring those down to a place where people who are not into that can still recognize, that might not be something that I resonate with, but maybe it isn't as woo-woo as I thought it was.
Yeah.
So I want to open it with that and give you a chance to tell us a little bit about those practices.
That's so funny. That is exactly what we call it in this house. In fact, we call my room that I'm sitting in the juju room. And yeah, it is like this foreign concept. However, I'm not someone, not that I'm opposed to this. I actually didn't do shamanic training for like the ayahuasca or anything like that. I actually trained with spirit shamans. So they don't do any drugs. Like they don't believe in alcohol or drugs. So just for anyone that's listening, it's not for that capacity, which I know is mainstream right now. So that was actually a really beautiful training to understand our connection with, in that aspect, it's more like spirit and understanding how to connect with your higher self. Put it in a very simple form.
Mhm.
The Reiki Master is movement of energy and how we can heal the self and heal others, right? Through what we are naturally, we're all gifted with it. There's a reason why mothers instantly will put their hand on their child's knee when they get a cut, right? That's what they consider Reiki energy. That's the palms of your hands that generate from the heart space that are sending that healing energy into your child. This is why that we just intuitively do that.
Well,
Right? These intuitive things that we do. And I understand that it's like this whole foreign concept, which, to be honest with you, when I studied the quantum mechanics side of things, it explains it all. So like that was my like, oh, everything makes sense in a scientific form, which most people that are analytical, that explains it all, right? To be open to everything was kind of my philosophy. Like I'm going to be open to all ways of thinking, and doesn't mean I'm going to do them all. I want to understand some things, especially when I speak about it, I want to understand at least some capacity of what I'm speaking. So diving down those woo-woo rabbit holes kind of paralleled with yoga, right? It kind of leads down that pathway anyways. And then diving down the scientific side is actually really cool to see how it explains all of it, literally all of it.
And I think that there's just such a great big world out there that so many of us never explore anything new and different. And when you start the path of wanting to learn more and see more and experience more, I think it's eye-opening. And some things are for some people, some things aren't. But to be open-minded enough to figure out what works for you, I think is part of growth. That's just part of becoming a bigger, brighter person.
Yeah, I think, for me, it was more like I didn't want to follow a path of what everyone told me I needed to do, what looked normal. We're gonna put quotes on that, like what looked normal was what, and I think that's what happens. Like even with the clients that I work with, that's what I notice is they follow the path of what everyone tells, what their parents said was right, what religion they said was right, what this was right, where they needed to go to college, what they needed to study, like down to everything. And then we even do it with people we date, like when we open up to every possibility, right? Then you can discover what is your path. And until we open up to every possibility, you literally have no idea. You're still following what someone else has told you.
Absolutely. And I think that journey doesn't have to be this moment where you blow up your life, like we're talking about. I think it's these little steps, these things that start having you look at life differently. And then by the time you get to the place to maybe make a more radical change that would look radical to the outside, you've already had all the radical change fundamentally inside.
Yeah.
And that alignment is when I think you feel like, wow, I've really gotten to a different place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the easy way that I can say this for people is anytime you feel resistance or like that tightness or tense, don't do it. Anytime you feel ease and open, follow that. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever direction that takes you in all areas of your life, follow that. Tense, run. Open, follow.
Mm-hmm. And that speaks from a place of compassion. And you even talk about that. You talk about practicing this happy sense of compassion. And I love that because we have to love ourselves first, and how
Yeah.
many people really do that?
Yeah, exactly. And there was a part of my life where it got really dark that and I have my clients do this, so I'm going to put this out there for anyone that's listening. I have my clients set an hourly alarm, literally every hour on your phone. And I titled mine self check-in. A lot of my clients will then end up changing their titles to what it is. And every hour on the hour, especially when I was in my darkest moments, I had this alarm go off to have me do a moment of check-in. What am I doing at that moment? Am I happy? Am I doing something that's self-sabotaging? I mean, I had an eating disorder. For me, it was like, am I doing something that's taking me down that path of leading me in there, myself sabotaging myself? And in the case that I was doing something that was negative or leading me down a pathway that wasn't good, then it was for me to redirect. All right, so what can I do to change this? Do I need to go change my location? Like just go step outside? Do I need to turn on really loud music and dance for a minute? Do I need to jump up and down, right? Like get the body moving? Or in the case it was something that I was doing that I was really enjoyed, then when those hourly alarms go off, then it's like, you know what? I really enjoy this. Like verbally, audibly saying, I love this. I feel good right now. And so I'm affirming to my system that I love this. So I seek more of it. Right. And then when I'm doing something that I'm not doing, I'm changing that direction. So again, my system then seeks out more of what is pleasurable,
Mm-hmm.
what my body enjoys.
I love that.
So like for me, that was a very helpful tool. So I'm putting that out there for anyone that's listening. Turn your
Good. I
alarms
hope
on.
I like that. I mean, it sounds like we're doing a self check-in and what
Yeah.
is your level of self-care and how are you throughout the day? And I
And
think
sometimes
that's
we
great.
need it every hour,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes we might need it more often than that. However, in the beginning, I'm going to let everyone know it's super annoying. And I understand that like people are like, oh, the coolest thing that happens though, like you were talking, neuroscience shows this, our brain, that pathway starts to know what's happening. And eventually it's super cool. Like, before your alarm goes off that it's about to go off and you instantly, naturally, like my system will check in and it will redirect when it needs to redirect. So you like already autopilot go into this really cool thing of being like, oh, let me change what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Wait,
Well, and it's our body needs to feel safe. And if we train it basically by repetition, by saying, we're doing inventory, we're taking inventory of how we feel and how we're showing up. And I think there's a statistic, and I hate to quote one when I'm not having it in front of me, make sure I'm right, but I feel like it's somewhere between 80 something percent of all of our thoughts are negative. That's just the way it is. So we have the opportunity to shift that and change that. And if you're doing a check-in, you're checking regularly, like you're suggesting, we have a chance to take those negative thoughts and replace them with something positive. And that is a complete game changer in how we look at the world and we look at ourselves on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just catch it on the fly. Like catch it
Mm-hmm.
as often as you can. And the more you do it, then the less often you live in this negative self-talk and that spiral that you can get stuck in.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely. Well, this has been like so eye-opening because I love the way you put it in such a calm way. And I like to hear about people that have had their journey such as you and decide I'm going to do something very different with my life and I'm going to change my whole life approach. And I think that's so inspiring to other people. So I really appreciate you sharing all that with us today.
Thanks for having this and having me on and getting messages out to those that are listening.
We have this thing we do on the Redhead Reveal podcast where the prior guest leaves a question for a future guest. And your question that someone left for you is, what didn't you do that you wish you had?
What didn't I do that I
Less
wish I...
about regrets of things you did, but what didn't you do? What didn't you do that you
I'll
wish
put
you
this
had
out
done?
there. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
for sure put this out there. I didn't go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the one experience I didn't get to have. So that would probably be the one. Not that I'm saying that everyone needs to go to college or even that I probably would have completed college. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that one experience. And that was something that I did encourage my daughter was to go to college and experience what it's like. And she did, went for a semester straight A's and was like, yeah, it's not for me.
And
And
that's
that's
okay. Yeah, it's a
one
path.
thing I didn't
Yeah.
do. So
Yeah.
there we go.
Okay, great. Well, what do you want to leave? What question do you think you want to leave for my future guest and that you can post for them to answer?
Let's leave them with the question of What is the message you would want to leave behind for your loved ones?
Okay, kind of a legacy concept here. Okay. All right. Well, we will pitch that to the next guest and circle back
curious
to you.
what they're going to answer
Let
with.
me know how they answered and let you know. And we will have all your information in the show notes, and so people can find you, Jenny. Thank you so much for sharing your light with us today. We appreciate it.